Hello everyone, you are watching a snippet of the Countdown program from November 24, 2022. Today is Thursday. See the full version of the program on the Patreon resource. And thank you to everyone who is becoming our patrons right now. Today is exactly 9 months since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of the Rashists into the territory of Ukraine. And today it can be stated that the world agenda has changed dramatically, and Islamic terrorism has been replaced by Russian state terrorism. On the eve of the European Parliament voted for a resolution recognizing Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. That is, a beneficiary interested in the development of such terror. Rashist propagandists began vying with each other to shout about the recommendatory nature of the document, which does not oblige to anything and legally is like shaking the air, but they themselves understand that this is not so. This is a stigma, a label that now stands on every Russian who is involved in the Russian state. Do you pay taxes? Sponsoring terror. Do you buy and sell something and somehow come into contact with the Russian state? You pay for rockets and bathe in the blood of the dead, even if you look white and fluffy and oppose Putin. From now on, a Russian tax resident is a source of terrorist danger for the world community. That's what it means. And the Kremlin also understood this very well, and therefore they reacted to the adoption of this resolution with a massive missile attack on Ukraine, as if confirming, yes, we are terrorists, but you still have no idea to what extent we are terrorists. With this resolution, the European Parliament forced the kid to finally tear off the mask of decency and show the world the mug of a scumbag, although it had periodically protruded from under the diplomatic veil of politeness before. But now, everything. Putlo crime will no longer be shy and will begin to destroy everything around him in an adult way. In the past 24 hours alone, Russian Rashists launched 78 missile and 23 airstrikes, carrying out more than 70 shellings from MLRS at the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine, settlements and infrastructure of Ukraine. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said today that power engineers and Kyivvodokanal specialists have been working all night to restore the life support of the capital. By morning, 70% of the capital remained without electricity. Ukraine's nuclear power plants will start operating tonight, Ukrainian Energy Minister Roman Abramovsky promised. According to him, after that, a reduction in the shortage of electricity in the country is expected. And the night before, the UN Security Council held an emergency meeting, after listening to an online speech by Ukrainian President Zelensky. In response to the speech of the leader of Ukraine, the permanent representative of Russia to the UN, the terrorist Nebenzia called Zelensky's speeches by video link at meetings of the UN Security Council unacceptable. According to him, if Zelensky wants to participate in the meetings of the UN Security Council, he must do it in person. Nebenzia also said that allegedly not the massive missile strikes of Russian troops and the targeted destruction of critical infrastructure, but the Ukrainian air defense systems, are to blame for the deaths of civilians in Ukraine. Missile fragments or Ukrainian missiles that have gone astray hit those objects that Russia did not aim at, Nebenzia said, adding that Russia is thus seeking negotiations with Ukraine. This is how a maniac demands reciprocity by beating the victim. This whole terrorist thriller taking place in front of the eyes of the whole world cannot go on forever. And the fact that the evaluation characteristics of the actors have finally been officially issued gives reason to believe that the Kremlin's crimes will no longer go unpunished, and the criminals will be dealt with thoroughly. The Kremlin senses this, and that is why they make desperate demarches, trying to intimidate them with under-the-fence show-offs with elements of cheap theatricality. Prigozhin responded to the intentions of European parliamentarians to recognize his military company as a terrorist organization by passing through the St. Petersburg lawyer Igor Yeliseyev to the European Parliament an information case in the form of a violin case with a sledgehammer inside. The logo of PMC Wagner was engraved on the gun and bloody marks were visible on the handle. The criminal illusion, according to Prigozhin's plan, should put the parliamentarians into a stupor. After all, it was with a sledgehammer that members of his gang broke the legs of prisoners in Syria, and recently, with demonstrative cruelty, they executed and exchanged Wagnerian prisoner in public. So this demonstrative striptease of the kid is unstoppable. They will undress in turn, both the Kremlin bosses themselves and their larvae, abandoned to the West under an opposition legend. Navalnists and other good Russians are already crying over the bodies of boys shot by soldiers of the armed forces of Ukraine. And over the bodies of Ukrainians killed by rashist rockets, they don't cry. Now the main thing for the West is not to stop helping Ukraine and not to be deceived about good Russians, because everyone who today dreams of saving the imperial system, all these Fagins and Latinins, Nevzorovs and Osechkins, Volkovs and Milovs, Venediktovs and Michael Nuks, are the same terrorists as the inhabitants of the Kremlin. They just haven't taken off their masks yet and pulled their sledgehammers out of their bosoms. And more about Putin and his cook Prigozhin. This is not a tabloid-style statement, but an assumption within the framework of understanding the subject of how monstrous and cynical the Kremlin's cannibals are. It is known that Prigozhin waited at the table when Putin treated Bush Jr. There are even photographs of this action. And by the way, are you sure that the criminal savages did not feed the unsuspecting President of the United States some steamy human? Yes, and they giggled behind him. Look how he eats, and what to talk about with him after that. He's a cannibal. Soon he will be pinned and he will definitely see the human soul of our Godfather, and he saw. Become our patrons right now and look further in this program. The moment of truth for recent friends of the Kremlin. Serbia is offered to join the sanctions against Russia as part of European integration. The EU is preparing the 9th package of sanctions against Russia, and European Commissioner for Justice Didier Reynders says that circumventing sanctions will be considered a crime against the European Union and equated in danger with terrorism and drug trafficking. The meeting in Yerevan of the heads of the CSTO member states ended in a complete fiasco. Pashinyan refused to sign the final document, and what will happen next with this organization is not at all clear. Against the backdrop of clear setbacks, both military and diplomatic, the Russian leadership can go all out. In the Western press, they started talking about the possible use by rachists in Ukraine of chemical weapons such as the infamous Novichok. The command of the armed forces of Ukraine addressed the citizens of Belarus with a warning that the Russian special services could prepare provocations on their territory in order to draw Belarus into the war against Ukraine. In particular, the Belarusian nuclear power plant Ostrovets may become the target of the terrorist attack. And that is all. See the full version of the program on the Patreon resource. And thanks to everyone who is becoming our patrons right now. I hugged everyone. Met tomorrow on Friday Live. Glory to Ukraine.